Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Elizabeth and this is my Tarot for Beginners course, my free Tarot for Beginners course. So if you're new here, how my courses work is I put all my content out for free. You can watch all the videos, you can come and join my tarot community and be part of the conversation. And if you choose to support my channel, there's always a workbook that you might be interested in if it's a course you're enjoying that helps you get just that little bit more value out of the training courses that I offer. And the people that choose to buy my journals, and I try to make them as inexpensive as possible, they help to support my work. But of course you don't have to, it's optional. So if you'd like to be part of the free course, please join us at connectwithyourdeck.com/beginners. I'll make sure that the link is down in the description box. And of course, if you've just found me, please subscribe to the channel. It certainly helps support the work I do. It's free. And if you hit the notifications bell and the thumbs up, you will get notifications of all of my videos as I put them out into the YouTube stratosphere. So today we are talking about week 4, and week 4 we go back into a timeline, and if you've watched my previous video which was about the history of the tarot, you'll know I'm a bit into timelines. Something happened with this course and I discovered timelines and I liked them. So I've put together some pages here and they're on the people of the tarot. Here's some more. They're on the people of the tarot, and it goes in order of the people who influenced the tarot that we know today and love today, and each one of them, what their contributions were. So what I'm going to do is, I think the easiest way to describe this, rather than me sitting here carrying on, is I'm going to spin the camera around. I'm going to get on the iPad and show you some fully blown up pictures of each person so you can see them and at least get a sense of who they are. And then I've got some books and tarot decks and things that they've done, and I'm going to show those to you so that you can get a sense of who they are and their contribution to the tarot. So the timeline's in my workbook, but there's also training that you can watch today about the people who influence the tarot. So let's spin the camera around and make a start. So I'm just going to use my workbook and my iPad today, and I'm going to use my iPad to blow up some of the images of the people in this workbook to show you who they are, because I realized that with my iPhone over the top that you might not be able to see some of these images. So I thought it might be nice to have my iPad there to blow the pictures up. I'm talking about the people who've really influenced our modern tarot decks, which started with the which sort of started with this deck that really took off, which was the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I really want to sort of have a sense of understanding where the tarot came from. Now, I've done a previous video that talks a lot about all the different historical pathways, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to talk a lot about the European history, which I know is going to rub some people up the wrong way, but that is what I'm going to do because the history is just so huge, and I really want to talk about the beginning of using the cards for divination, which I know for millennia sits with the gypsies. There is a real belief that it sits with the gypsies. But what I'm going to talk about is my first person and work from there, which is Etiella. Now, Etiella was not by any means the first person to talk about, to actually use the cards for divination, but he's the first person to actually write about it. And he wrote this book, which is loosely translated from French to Etiella, or the only true way to draw the cards. And he wrote the book back in 1770. And he was the one that thought about astrology and the 4 classical elements as a way of understanding the cards. He also designed his own deck, and the deck had picture cards for the major arcana and what we call pip cards, or cards that just had, you know, the number of swords, the number of pentacles, the number of cups on them, not cards that had images on the minor arcana cards like we know with the Rider-Waite-Smith, and previous to that, the deck that really influenced the Rider-Waite-Smith, which was the Solarbuska Tarot. So he was the first person to really go down that pathway of trying to formalize this idea of tarot for divination. Then we have Anthony Court de Gebelin. Now, Anthony Court de Gebelin was basically a person who wrote in this French encyclopedia, and he wrote about with Comte Millet, and they wrote about the Egyptian origin of the tarot, and this article really influenced our understanding of the Egyptian correspondences to the tarot. Now, I'm not sure whether there really are Egyptian correspondences to the tarot. There's this idea that it goes back to the Egyptian god of Thoth, and it really influenced Aleister Crowley with his Thoth tarot deck, and many other people who've written since. For example, I've got a deck here that comes from a man called C.C. Zalen, who wrote a book called The Sacred Tarot, and his organization was the Brotherhood of Light, and he is very, again, influenced by these Egyptian correspondences in his deck. Again, pip cards that don't show images, very traditional. If you know anything about C.C. Zane and the Brotherhood of the Light, please put some comments down in the comments, because I bought this deck as an example of an Egyptian deck just to show you. There are lots of them. And so when you go into a spiritual shop and you see a deck that has Egyptian images on it, that's where it comes from. Now, the next person we're going to talk about is Eliphas Levi. Now, Eliphas Levi was French, and he also talked about the tarot as being of Egyptian origin, going back to the Egyptian god of Thoth. And when he was challenged to say, did you happen to see that article by Anthony de Gebelin and Comte Millet? He said, what article? No, it's got nothing to do with it. And he never ever acknowledged that it wasn't really his idea. But he certainly expanded on that idea. He was, I believe, a Jewish priest before he went into occult study. And so his thoughts were around the Jewish letter or the Jewish alphabet being attributed to the tarot, and also the Kabbalah. And he wrote a lot of books which really influenced the Golden Dawn. And his connection to Arthur Waite was that Arthur Waite translated a lot of his work, and those translations really influenced our understanding of modern esoteric study, and particularly influenced the Golden Dawn. So he's important to know about. Then we move on to William Westcott. Now, William Westcott is a very interesting person. I do apologise that picture's a bit blurry. William Westcott started the Golden Dawn, and he's the person who found the cipher manuscripts. Now, he says he found them, that they are ancient manuscripts of esoteric wisdom. He doesn't say where he found them. The bits of these manuscripts that remain have been looked at, and people believe they're genuine. They were used as the basis for the Golden Dawn. If he wrote them, people are saying he must have been a spiritual genius. We don't know, but they formed the basis of the Golden Dawn. Now, that's sort of his claim to fame, and then he bows out because he went off and had a political career, and they basically said to him, look, you can't do spiritual study and be head of a secret spiritual society and be a politician. Like, it's not going to work. So he said, I can't do the Golden Dawn anymore, and he went off to become a politician. Then we have William Robert Woodman. Now, we don't know a lot about William Robert Woodman because he was part of the group of three people, William Westcott, William Robert Woodman and MacGregor Mathers, who started the Golden Dawn, and he died before the Golden Dawn really got going and took off. So we don't know a lot about him other than he was a founding father. He certainly was very high up in Freemasonry, the same as William Westcott was and MacGregor Mathers, and Freemasonry particularly influenced this idea of a secret society in the Golden Dawn, and he was very recognized as an occultist, just didn't really get a chance to do much with the Golden Dawn. So who is really the Golden Dawn? The Golden Dawn became MacGregor Mathers, and you can see him here in his ceremonial outfits. Now, MacGregor Mathers was this flamboyant person who took the cipher manuscripts. He was an acclaimed occultist himself and did a whole lot of work on them, along with some other people who helped him get the Golden Dawn going. And one of those people was his wife, Moina Mathers, and he met her in the most romantic way. He was this flamboyant man, and she was sitting in the British Museum, and he walked up to her and introduced himself, and the rest is history. And she was doing life drawing. She was an artist. Here she is here. You can see her dressed up here. She was in a play, and she's all dressed up for the play. And she had a very interesting relationship with MacGregor Mathers. It was a very, they were just totally obsessed and consumed by the Golden Dawn. Moina did a lot of drawings of the first tarot cards, and the tarot cards was seen as central to the whole organisation. Every person who joined the Golden Dawn had to draw a deck, had to create their own deck, and so the deck was seen as a way of expressing your spiritual study. And so even studying the Rider-Waite-Smith the way we have is a way of bringing yourself into esoteric study. So this is a book that I got from the Centre for the Study of the Golden Dawn. And you can see this is a book, they've said it's by Moina Mathers and W.W. Westcott. The main reason I bought it is because I wanted to just give you a look at these images, just some of them that were drawn by Moina Mathers. So these are the very first tarot card images drawn for the Golden Dawn. So they are heavily influenced by tarot cards that came before. And when we do the history of the tarot, I will show you the decks that went before. Unfortunately, I couldn't put these images into my book, but copyright law is interesting. You can do a video and sort of talk about things and show them and acknowledge people, but you can't put them into print. It's interesting. So I'm going to show you a lot of things that perhaps I can't show you in the workbook without paying lots and lots of copyright fees and the cost of the workbooks blowing out ridiculously. So I will put a link to where you can get this book in the description box. Everything I've shown here will have links, and so that if you want your own copy, you can go and get one. And they actually have a whole series of books here that teach you all about the Golden Dawn, and they look really interesting, and they certainly are on my list of books to get to help me learn some more about the tarot. So that's Moina Mathers and MacGregor Mathers. MacGregor Mathers was so flamboyant, he actually said, all those drawings are mine. but we know they really probably weren't, that they probably were Moina Mather's drawings of the first Golden Dawn deck. I searched everywhere trying to find an original deck that I could show you of the first Golden Dawn tarot deck, and that's all I could find. There are lots of decks out there by some very learned people who have devised these decks based on the Golden Dawn teachings, but they're not the original deck. And I just wanted to show you some of the original images. So the next person I want to talk about is Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley, there are some really interesting images of him online. And he is known for a lot of esoteric writing, a lot. I've got a lot of books here from him where he has interpreted a lot of esoteric subjects, including the Enochian angels, all of those sorts of subjects, numerology, astrology. He's written about all sorts of things, and he was amazing. He was from aristocracy, very privileged, and so he spent his time writing. He even wrote detective stories, and I spoke to a lady, I haven't read one, but I spoke to a lady at our Tarot Guild who'd read one, and she said it was written in the first person as if he was the detective, and it was so narcissistic. I did this and I did that and I solved it and I was fabulous sort of thing. And that doesn't surprise me. He's a very intelligent man. He was really grumpy that his tarot deck didn't take off like Arthur Waite's tarot deck. He created the tarot deck with Lady Frida Harris. This lady here, she took some phenomenal amount of time to do all the drawings, something like 7 years, and they went down the pathway of a very traditional tarot deck. So you can see here, again, it's called the Thoth Tarot deck. He actually wrote quite an extensive book that explains the deck too, which I've got here. And I'll put a link in the description if you would like to get that book. And the cards themselves, the major arcana cards are all images, but if you look at the minor arcana cards, they are your traditional idea of 5 wands, or, you know, what else have we got here? What I can show you. Or here, 7 pentacles. And you've got a word there, a trigger word, which is where a lot of our ideas for having words, keywords for the tarot come from. They come from Aleister Crowley. Nothing's original. But I think because he went down this pathway of not doing a complete deck of pictures, that people just looked at the deck and they just didn't know what to do with it, and it was too complicated. And as we know, confused mind says no. I had a business coach say that to me once, and I've never forgotten it. If something's too confusing, people just say, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard, and they walk away. And I think that's sort of what happened with this deck. I actually want to do some work on it when I'm at a point where I feel I've said everything there is to say about the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. So Aleister Crowley believed that Arthur Waite's interpretation of the tarot was butchery. He could not stand it that he did a full deck of images. He did not like any of it, and he really did not like Arthur Waite. And I think it was because a lot of Arthur Waite's work was really acclaimed, and he just didn't like any of it. So we've got Lady Frida Harris, who took 7 years to draw the deck. She was she was from aristocracy, and so lots of money, and it was absolutely scandalous that she was involved with Aleister Crowley, because he was sort of, there's talk of him with, magical orgies and all sorts of things that went on. And if you look at if you look up pictures of him on the web, there's some pictures that he's really scary. And I think I said before, he reminds me of Uncle Fester's brother. There's some pictures, and he is really, really scary. And so there's part of her that was, it was like the scandal of drawing his deck, and she was a bit dismissive, but they said secretly they think she was just delighted to have this excitement in her life. And this may well be why she took so long to draw the deck. Then we have Arthur Waite. And Arthur Waite was an accomplished occultist. He is the designer of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, this deck here, which we all know and love. And the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, actually, it was popular when it was released in 1910. The images, it was always known as the Rider-Waite deck. The images were drawn by this beautiful lady here called Pixie, or Pamela Coleman Smith. And she drew backdrops for theatre. And if you look at the cards, you know, card like this particularly, where you've got the figure in the foreground and this background to the picture, is very much like a theatre backdrop. And that was how she drew the cards. And she drew an image for all 78 cards, and it meant that the deck really, really took off. It really took off. It's really sad. She actually didn't make very much out of the deck at all, and she died in obscurity, which is really, really sad. And it's been in modern times that we've called the deck the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot deck in reference to her, because she really took Arthur Waite's ideas and brought them to life. And look, there's times where he's quite dismissive of her and calls her a bit ditzy, and then other times where he does acknowledge that she was an extremely talented occultist. And again, along with Arthur Waite, she was part of the Golden Dawn. Arthur Waite wrote a book that goes with his tarot deck called The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and this is a book that you might find interesting to have as well. The Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot does have gaps, and in this book you'll see Arthur Waite talks a lot about the people drawn in the tarot deck representing the people who might be coming into your life. The problem is that it's just not very inclusive. And I've got a gorgeous deck here that I want to show you called, where have I put it? Should be just here. I haven't put it too far, I hope. So I can show you. Modern Witch Tarot. This one here, which gives you a more inclusive example of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. And then, here it is. And there's another deck I've got here that is really lovely as well, called the Melanated Tarot. And again, it's just a recognition of people of colour. And I'm really aware that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck does have that huge gap where it's not inclusive. And when you read the Pictorial Key to the Tarot, you'll be like, what? But the deck is a product of its time. People didn't travel. And I know there were people of colour in England, but it was a very different time, and it is really unfortunate, but it's really sad to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we study this deck in view of it being a good place to start, and you really cannot take that away from Arthur Waite. Now, the other person we need to know about is Israel Regardie. And Israel Regardie was one of the last members of sort of the last iteration of the Golden Dawn. And there were many Golden Dawn chapters that developed from MacGregor Mather's original Golden Dawn, where people all had different ideas about what should be happening with the Golden Dawn. There are other people who thought they could do it. There are other people who copied all of that, as there always is with these things. And it meant that there were all these splinter organisations. And Israel Regardie died in 1985, so he is quite recent. When we consider the Rider-Waite-Smith was published in 1910. The Thoth Tarot was 1944. And everything all started back with Etiella in 1738 and, Eliphas Levi 1810 to 1875 sort of thing. So he's quite recent. He born in 1907, died in 1985, and he joined the Golden Dawn and said, oh my goodness, look at all these writings, and we've been told we have to keep it secret, which is why when we come to study the Thoth Tarot and in studying the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, there are some things that it's really difficult to make sense of exactly what the messages are. For example, if we look at the Ace of Cups, or if I can find it in here, I always think of these things to tell you afterwards, and I don't always have things ready. And of course, this card will be the last one in the deck as I'm going through looking for it. For example, of course it is the last one. There it is. This card. We don't know whether this is a W for Arthur Waite, whether it is an M for Mary Magdalene. There's a mansion in, I think, Europe that it refers to. There's a whole, yes, I did a whole video on the symbolism of this card and trying to work out just what that cup, it's about the Holy Grail and what that cup actually symbolizes, all the symbolism, but particularly that W, or is it an M, you know? And that's the sort of thing, because the Golden Dawn swore its members to secrecy, nobody could really talk about all of the esoteric study and symbolism and meaning and knowledge that they had. And Israel Regardie said, this is all going to be lost. I can see that this is all going to be lost. And he, so he released it all. He had it all printed, broke all the Golden Dawn rules and did it, and was maligned, criticised, you know, really, really was, you know, made to feel terrible for doing this. But I'm so glad he did, because if he hadn't have, we wouldn't have what we have today. And a lot of the Golden Dawn manuscripts have been lost, but what he printed, of course, preserved all of this knowledge that we can all enjoy today. So other people you might like to know about are Papus. Papus was an occultist who did a lot of writing about the Kabbalistic correspondences and the Tree of Life and other correspondences to do with the tarot, and a lot of his works were translated by Arthur Waite. So he's also a great person to study and know about. Paul Foster Case. Now, Paul Foster Case, I'm going to show you his deck when we talk about tarot decks, but here's another, he started the Builders of the Aditum organization, which was sort of a spin-off of the Golden Dawn. He really liked Arthur Waite's deck, but he didn't agree with all of the images, so he redrew some of the Golden Dawn, the images in the Rider-Waite-Smith to make his own tarot deck. Contemporary authors you might want to consider. Stuart Kaplan from US Games. He has written some amazing books, and his first book, Tarot Cards for Fun and Fortune Telling. There's sort of story and folklore that he was given the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot by a friend who said, come on, Stuart, what are you going to do with this? It was sort of found in an antique shop somewhere, had disappeared into antiquity. What are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with it? And eventually he released it and wrote a book with it. And this was in the 1970s and it took off. So he's worth knowing about. I have his encyclopedia of the tarot volumes 1 through to 4. I manifested them. And that is an amazing story, and the book is amazing, and we will be using that book to look at some of the older decks when I come to do that particular video. So he's got amazing writings. Robert Wang, I love for understanding Jungian's tarot by Carl Jung, you know, all of the understandings that Carl Jung had with his fascination with the tarot, and understanding the Kabbalah and the Golden Dawn. Rachel Pollack, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, beautiful book. Barbara Moore, if you're a beginner, Tarot for Beginners is fabulous. Paul Fenton Smith is who I started with. The Tarot Revealed, Tarot Masterclass, and Advanced Tarot were his books. The Tarot Revealed was one of the first books I read on the tarot, and I knew nothing about it. And he literally takes you through the tarot and explains it. Eden Gray, and she is known for the Fool's Journey through the Major Arcana. So she is, again, great to read. Mary Greer has got the most amazing blog. It's sensational. She is worth going and looking up, and she's got fabulous books and has done a lot of research on the background of the tarot and the people of the tarot, and that's where I've learned a lot of my understandings of that. And Joan Bunning's another person who's got some great books on an introduction to the tarot and learning the tarot. So that's just some people to think about. I've got a reflection here that you can do in the comments of this video. You can join the course, connectwithyourdeck.com/beginners. It's free, and you can come into our Facebook group and talk about the people who've influenced you in the tarot, or you can just complete the workbook if you want to. It's up to you how you want to do the course. It's a free course. I do thank you if you stuck around right to the end. I hope you got real value out of this video. I'll see you in the next one, which I'm really looking forward to, where we're going to be talking about the history of the tarot through the decks, and I'm actually going to show you some of the older decks and how the decks have evolved over time. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.